Okay, you are on, sir.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Special Finance Committee budget hearings day 2, which is April 14, 2021 at approximately 1:02 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Councillor Cassett Sanchez.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Villarreal.
Present.
Councillor Lindell.
Here.
Councillor Romero Worth.
I'm here.
Councillor Abeta.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, so under today's agenda, we still have to conclude business from yesterday, which would be affordable housing, arts and culture, and tourism, and then get into public works. And then we had scheduled the unions, but I have requested that we start the day with a presentation from the unions, because I would hate for us, since we're only going to 3 o'clock, to not get to them and have to put them off another day. And who knows even how long after that if we don't take care of that first. So if that's okay with the committee, I would like to hear from the unions. So are there any comments or concerns regarding that change to our agenda?
I think it's a good idea, Mr. Chair.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
A move to approve as amended.
Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councillor Cassett Sanchez.
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Councillor Abeta.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then that will bring us to our unions, and the first on our list is POA. Do we have a representative from POA with us?
Yes, Rebecca Hildebrand for POA. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for your time. We are going to begin negotiations on Monday. We are looking forward to finding a way to retain the great officers that we have and also attract more laterals to the city so we can better serve the community with more officers and just provide great service to the city of Santa Fe. So we're very much looking forward to it.
Well, I can tell you, I know we appreciate the service you do provide to the city of Santa Fe, and we appreciate you taking the time to address us this afternoon. Is there anything that any of the members of the Finance Committee would like to state at this time? Okay, thank you. Then we will go ahead and we will hear from IAFF now.
Thank you all.
Hello, everyone. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Aiden Lopez, president of the Santa Fe Firefighters Association, Local 2059. After reviewing notes in regards to our previous budget conversation, I reflected on the serious unknowns that the pandemic presented. I saw how the Local 2059 Fire Union worked diligently to assist financially in easing the uncertainty of the economic downfall, while being able to maintain appropriate care and emergency response for the citizens of Santa Fe. Neither of these were easy tasks to overcome and assimilate. The fire department surrendered pivotal funds that make the public safety of Santa Fe top-notch in order to help the city succeed in keeping our head above water. We also incorporated new and difficult techniques to help protect and serve our community during the worst pandemic of our era. What aided in these decisions and incorporation was the ease of working with our transparent management team, and even more so, the selflessness of our union members. Working together, we were able to aid in saving over $500,000 from the Local 2059's contract. We also went above and beyond by creating specific COVID protocols and limiting exposure to ourselves and the public while providing the best possible care this country has to offer. I'm not one to dwell on issues of the past, and I hope we all have common goals in focusing on the positivity and growth that is ahead of us. That being said, this year's fire department budget will allow us to continue our pre-pandemic path while continuing to incorporate new safety practices that will help in beating this pandemic and better prepare us for any that may arise in the future. Our budget proposal for fiscal year 21-22 will allow us to regain what we had foregone, along with potential increase to a well-deserved group of firefighters that sacrifice so much for this community. The budget will ensure that all members of the fire department get their appropriate, deserved, and fair reporting of their retirement funds. It will place appropriate levels of paramedics and firefighters on the streets to respond to any and all emergencies at a standard second to none. These emergencies encompass the simplest local medical emergencies to large-scale out-of-city and state wildland fires, both of which provide revenue for the city of Santa Fe. This budget will also ensure well-deserved promotion for the men and women that face this pandemic head-on without skipping a beat or missing a step. Most importantly, it will allow our civilians the opportunity to serve their community and have a meaningful impact on the city's residents and patrons alike. With everything our fire department has endured, I feel no one in the city of Santa Fe deserves more praise than the men and women of the Local 2059. Praise for their selflessness, praise for their preparedness, and praise for taking on the daily challenges of this call to help without hesitation. I appreciate you all allowing me this time. I hope we can continue to make the city of Santa Fe a better place for its employees and residents for years to come. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you. And yes, indeed, you do deserve praise, you and fire and all of our city employees, police also. I know we're going to be hearing the budget you referred to on Thursday, April 22nd. We look forward to that. And once again, thank you for taking your time out of your afternoon to address us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so now we'll go ahead and hear from AFSCME Local 3999.
Good afternoon. I'm Therese Martinez. I'm the recording secretary for AFSCME Local 3999. We're going to have two persons that are going to be speaking on behalf of the union, just because we thought it was easier to do it twofold. So, good afternoon, Chairman Abeyta, members of the Finance Committee, distinguished staff members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you on behalf of the AFSCME bargaining unit membership of Union Local 3999. First and foremost on our mind is the fiscal well-being of our members. The mayor sent out an email Friday, April 9th, stating, quote, "Our budget contains the equivalent of a 4% increase in pay and benefits for city employees. In addition, in this budget, we will cover the increases of the cost of healthcare with no added expense to you," end of quote. It elaborates with, "We also put in funding for professional development and education, as well as workplace safety training and equipment. We're adding staff and other resources that should mean that your work lives get better in the year ahead. We're also committed to a new classification and compensation study to make sure that your pay keeps pace with the marketplace." Do all these items listed amount to the equivalent of 4%? What is the cost breakdown? What then is the bottom line? How much of this increase lands up in the employee's hands? The average employee salary has been stated as being about $19 per hour. 4% amounts to 76 cents more an hour for the average salary. Recently, on the transparency page, updated April 1st, 2021, posted on the city's site, reflected salary increases for management in the neighborhood of increases of $4 more per hour were recently added and already granted. This does not include any other promotions or increases obtained through this budget review process. We, the AFSCME bargaining unit membership, are looking at what appears to be disparity, inequity in the appropriations granted to management and those offered to the union membership. Respectfully, we are requesting the 4% offered be seriously considered to be increased to reflect something similar to what management has already received, and that it be in addition to the benefits directed by the mayor's statement. The projection provided by the Finance Department in the opening remarks of this budget review paints a more positive outlook than what was previously perceived, with numbers getting close to 2019, putting the city in a healthier position. The term used was robust growth. The bargaining unit employees have suffered enough through the various circumstances created by the pandemic and the resulting repercussions. Help them by putting a healthy and respectful amount in the budget for AFSCME employee raises and benefits.
My name is Louis DeMello. I'm speaking as part of AFSCME Local 3999. I wanted to add some of the other funding priorities that you can consider to help the employees during this budget cycle. They're listed as follows. Stop funding the contracting out, outsourcing, and privatization of city services. Fill the vacant or frozen positions. Provide funding and competitive salaries to fill the positions and talent within the city. To fund positions in general, there are far too many underfunded positions. We are in dire need of more staff. The majority of our departments are understaffed and overworked. For you to fund new employee classifications, to provide a career ladder in each department and fully utilize the talent already in our ranks. To fund the personal protective equipment and standardized procedures for procuring that PPE for all departments, being that the objective of a fully operated facility and buildings is on the horizon. All of the equipment and all the protocols for them need to be in place. Fund a review rather than an additional class and comp study so we can learn from the past mistakes of previous class and comp studies instead of going forward and repeating the same mistakes. Fund an improved standard format for our uniform, footwear, and tool allowances with a cost of living adjustment that reflects inflation and costs for our employees. Fund a yearly increase to emergency call-in employees and employees on standby time for those employees that work those off hours. Fund an increase for shift differential that reflects the living wage and inflation rate increases. Fund a per diem rate that reflects the standard competitive allowances across the industry. Fund a competitive rate for traffic hazard and snow and ice removal for employees that brave the weather and potentially dangerous conditions to keep the rest of our staff safe. Fund improved, updated methods for the bilingual incentive pay for employees that are legitimate staff to an ever-increasing Spanish-speaking population in the city of Santa Fe. Fund additional positions in transit who are chronically understaffed. Fund an increase in training and tuition assistance that reflects rising tuition rates. Fund training assistance applicable to the job classification and position requirements that give employees the incentive to be certified and or licensed. Fund higher longevity rates for longstanding employees to retain expertise, experience, knowledge, and talent inside the city. Fund the internal auditor position within the city so that we have an independent agency to keep track of the city's records. All of the many funding needs of the many employees in different departments cannot all be listed at this time. That's an issue that requires a continuous dialogue that we look forward to having not only with this body, but also with the management that runs this city.
What doesn't cost anything but your time is listening and digesting what we're requesting on behalf of our AFSCME Local 3999 membership today. Will you take the time and energy and effort to fund our requests? Will you look at our requests with with our perspective, that of a hardworking, earnest employee with very real needs that are necessary to survive and thrive at their job and career. We are asking you to fund those needs. We are asking you to fully fund those raises and make those raises healthy and respectful of the employees carrying out those job duties, those responsibilities that are those everyday activities that keep the city's operations running smoothly. Thank you for inviting us to speak. Respectfully, we are AFSCME Local 3999.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Martinez, and thank you, Mr. DeMella. A lot of things that you raised, I've seen in parts of the budget. And so as we continue to go through it through the specific departments or relative departments, I'm sure between myself and other members of the governing body and the mayor, we will ask the question when it's appropriate about specific items that you raised this afternoon. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to do this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilwoman Villarreal.
I'd like to request that AFSCME send us what they read. It was hard to keep track of every single piece that they were talking about. So if they could email us that document, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, yes, good idea.
We can do that. Thank you, Councilor Villarreal.
Okay, so then that concludes our presentations from our unions, and we will go to our agenda. We're still on community development, that department, and specifically we are at affordable housing. Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee and councilors. Alexandra Ladd will take you through the affordable housing budgets for FY22.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to members of the Finance Committee. I feel like this year my budget might be the most talked about budget in the city. But I'm laughing, but it's actually quite serious because I think just a few years ago, I was fighting tooth and nail for every single scrap I could get out of the budget. And I think this year really is demonstrating a shared understanding of how important affordable housing is to our community, not just for poor people, which is how it was always previously thought of, but really for our entire community, both economically and culturally and civically. So to all of you, thank you very much. I think the big news for us in affordable housing is that we are adding a new position. This position will be primarily a project manager position, primarily in charge of allocating all of the affordable housing funds. So that would be both through the Community Development Block Grant Fund, through our general fund, and also the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I will start working with HR as soon as the budget's approved to finalize the job description and get it advertised. But I think this will add a lot of capacity, certainly to my time, particularly when it comes to all of the reporting requirements that are part of the Cdbg grant. And I believe, again, as everyone else has mentioned, this budget includes the 4% salary increase for everybody and the 3% salary increase for the department director. And in light of this budget, the increase to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is intended to create a total balance of $3 million. So we will have some revenue coming into the trust fund. And again, we can never predict exactly what that revenue will be, but we have an intention to ensure that balance at the end of the budgeting process gives us $3 million to allocate to programs and projects in our community. Is there another slide for us? We're pretty simple. Yes.
Sure.
So one other addition in this budget that is not going to be an ongoing addition is the community development line item. shows quite a huge increase. That increase specifically for this year is to accommodate our future uses from our second allocation of CARES Act through our CDBG grant. So it looks gigantic, and it is substantially big increase, but that will just be for this year. So we will be back to our normal funding levels unless we continue to get more CARES Act money or other emergency money, which is very much a possibility. So anyway, so that number is a little bit of a placeholder for right now, and we will do a budget adjustment as we start the fiscal year and as is needed. I think just to conclude, I wanted to just leave you all with this thought that through these affordable housing investments, we're really looking at supporting affordable housing, not only throughout the spectrum of housing need, and I think all of you have come along with me on this journey to understand that we can't just focus on homeownership housing or even just on rental housing or just sheltering homeless people. We have to do all of it, and we've never had enough resources to do all of it, but we are continuing to develop a strategy so that we can leverage these investments that we're making from these funding sources, both to support the supply side. So we do that in through our regulation, through our inclusionary zoning program, but we also provide funds to actually create housing units, to preserve housing units, to rehabilitate housing units. But then we're also supporting the demand side. So we're trying to help the capacity of individuals through rental assistance, down payment assistance, home repair loans to be able to afford housing and to be able to secure a stable housing situation. And then finally, we also support the capacity of our providers in the community. So we want, we're only as good as our best provider in the community, or our worst provider, I guess that's how that expression would go. So that's a super important piece to this, because we do not provide these services or housing units in-house. We work with our community of providers and all of the various community-based organizations to do this work. And that's a really, really important piece of the puzzle, because that means our bureaucracy, my budget would have to be about 10 times this big if I were doing any of that work within my own office. So it is a way that we achieve some really remarkable efficiencies in terms of how we spend public funds to support affordable housing. And with that, any questions? I'm happy to answer any details that we need to flesh out a little bit. Can happen now.
Great, thank you. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Ladd, for giving us the lowdown on your budget. I always thought that we would need more than one staff, considering what is not only on your plate now, but also what will continue to be as we look at more funding sources. So that's just something to flag. I did want to ask about that additional position. I didn't think that was a new position. Wasn't that a position that you all had in the past, but it was absorbed in past budgets?
Chair Beta, Councilor Villarreal, so I should probably clarify too that we have one unfilled position, which is the position that traditionally has been paid out of the CDBG budget. So we are looking to bring on 2 new people, but only one of those is a new position that is being created. To your question about the historic funding, the historic staffing, sorry, for the office, we certainly used to have more people. And I'm not remembering when. It's always been pretty lean and mean since I came back in 2012. But when I originally worked for the city, we had, I think we had four housing planners plus a director, and then no, five people working on housing, because that included the CDBG person. So we are sort of getting up to where we were 15 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I just want to note that, because we make it sound like it's new and it's going to support you, but we actually are trying to get back to the level that we used to be in, not just your division, but other departments. The other thing I wanted to ask about is your administrative support. I remember it being split between divisions. And I'm wondering if that's still the case.
Chair Beta, Councilor Villarreal, it is the case. I have 2 dedicated support folks who do nothing but housing, a contract administrator and a project specialist. But then with the economic development department, I share our fiscal office manager, fiscal. Gosh, Rich, I can't even remember what Jess's title is now, but she helps with the budgeting. She should be on this call, and she helps with all of the financial management, and she also assists with the Cdbg grant in terms of the financial side of the reporting to HUD.
So I guess my question is that still workable for you all? I know there's a connection between what's happening in each division, but it also, I think, is kind of creating a double duty for that particular person. So was there a thought or consideration to actually have somebody that was dedicated to doing administrative support specifically for housing?
Chair Beta, Councilor Villarreal, I appreciate that, of course, but I think that it isn't. The position used to also provide the same support for the MPO and long-range planning. So it's really not, it hasn't changed anything for the specific position itself. You know, I think it's a little probably unconventional. I don't know that it's even necessarily official in our budget, but maybe Rich could speak to that a little bit. I'm not, it works on my end, but
Yeah.
Rich, you might have a different opinion.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Villarreal, thank you for the question. Good afternoon. Yes, it is working, but I have been trying to carve out some budget dollars so that we can have an additional administrator because Alex's department does have a lot of creative work that Jessica balances between running our department and doing the work that Alex needs in housing. So currently in the fiscal budget that we reviewed yesterday, I do not have a funding source yet for that, but I can never say never, but we are trying to make that work as we sort of turn into a larger community development department. So that is a goal of mine, but right now we don't have the funding for it, but it is a goal of mine.
Yeah, I think that's important to flag because we see staff doing double duty, whether it's directors doing double duty, but also support middle level, mid-range staff that's also doing double duty. So I'm just wondering if there was, I don't even know who to ask about that, but I just think it would be beneficial to the department for you all to be able to have your own administrative support, given what's coming up, not just for affordable housing, but also for anything related to economic development or Midtown. So I'm just flagging that. I'm not sure if who's on from finance to talk about that potential, or is everything just the way it is given to us?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Villarreal, it's a very good question, and it's a conversation. I've had a couple of conversations with the finance director and city manager and the assistant finance director. So we are trying to figure out that conundrum, but the conversations have started, but I just don't have an answer for you today about how to find that funding source. So
yeah, I hear you, Director Brown, and I would like, maybe not at this moment, that we can look into that from the finance department's point of view to see if there's a way to support your needs as it relates to affordable housing.
thank you.
I think.
Mr. Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, if I can just add a little to that.
Sure.
I think it's important to realize that we're coming out of last year when we had severe restrictions on our budget. And we're coming out of that. We're not where we want to be or will be. But as we move forward, we'll address some of these issues with the admin support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lotero. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Cassette Sanchez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I think Councilwoman Villarreal helped answer my question, but of the 5 positions that are allocated to affordable housing, it sounds like all 5 will be filled this year. Is that correct? Once we hire those 2 other positions?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, that is absolutely 100% the intention. In fact, the current year budget has some of the salary for the position that's covered through Cdbg. So we may even be able to bring somebody online before the end of this fiscal year.
Wonderful. Good. Very, very glad to hear that. As Councilwoman Villarreal was mentioning, we know that you have basically been running on a shoestring. So I'm really happy that you're getting some more support, and definitely please keep us updated on how that additional support is helping you do your work and what additional support is needed in the future. As we have all mentioned, affordable housing is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue we're facing in the city right now. So making sure that we're staffed up there is crucial. I did want to touch on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I know we've been talking a lot about it. So we are funding to make sure that there's a $3 million floor. And as you mentioned, there are sometimes unpredictable resources that can come in. At this point, if those resources do come in, it'll be in addition to the 3 million, or will we budget adjust so we're only hitting 3 million this year?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, I'm going to ask Bradley Flitch to weigh in on the mix of funding revenue sources for that particular $3 million that you are referencing. But again, this was, as you mentioned, this was an allocation that we had in the current fiscal year. We did use the existing balances, a portion of the existing balances for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So in the current year, we do expect to receive additional funding in FY22, and there is a portion of reserves in there as well. So Bradley, can you give us the details on the revenue side?
Thank you, Mary. Chairman Abeyta, Councilor. There are 2 primary, well, we've added some new recently, and we added them to the budget. The first 2 primary sources that have been funding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund were the payment in lieu of alternative, and then also a infrastructure loan repayment to the city. Those 2 total, let me scroll over here a little bit, roughly $300 or $524,000 total. We also, with the changes to be considered this evening for lodger's tax and the 30-day, the increment of lodger's tax applicable to 31 and beyond days. According to the FIR, that's 364,000 of new revenue that would be coming in. Also, there is another, I believe today, where this evening the council will have the opportunity to dedicate non-enterprise property sales to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That in the FIR was expected to be 148,000. And to bring out the round out the 3 million, that would be coming from the general fund. So and it would be to bring it up to 3 million. And so as if the 30-day lodger's tax exceeds the 364,000, that would more than likely mean a reduction in the general fund subsidy. If we were to sell a much larger piece of property than 148,000, and those revenues went into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that too would reduce the subsidy from the general fund to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That actually was one of my next questions, is where are all the funding sources? So I do appreciate you spelling that out. So what I'm hearing is that by the end of, because Alex, you had mentioned like by the end of FY22, we will have made sure that we hit the 3 million throughout the year from these different funding sources, correct?
Counselor Casa Sanchez, that is the intention, yes.
And can you explain how that works? And I mean, I suppose with the general fund, we do have flexibility to put some money up front because the Affordable Housing Trust Fund funds these, you know, different projects. And I imagine that the timelines of when we need the dollars available probably vary on what type of housing issue we are funding with it. So can you talk to that a little bit more, and maybe Mary, you speaking as well, of, you know, making sure that we are, you know, how we're balancing kind of understanding where the funding is coming from. And I'm assuming that it has to do with the budget adjustments and how we push through those. So does that question make sense?
I think so. Chair Abeyta, Councilor Casa Sanchez, typically, we would only make available the amount of funding that had been deposited into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as of June 30th, the prior year. So we were never in the red. We were never sort of scrambling around trying to figure out how to fund projects that we had committed funds to. So the working with finance and these other sources of funding will change that dynamic a little bit. In that we won't necessarily, we will know what our balance is as of June 30th, which is then, that will then tell us how much of a gap we need to fill with other sources. Did that answer the question?
Yes, it did. Thank you. I do appreciate that explanation. That does make more sense to me. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the conversation. I know we've really talked about the 3 million as a floor moving forward. And what I'm hearing is this year, we're really looking at 3 million as the target number that we're hitting. But I do want to make sure that we continue that conversation of 3 million not being our ceiling, but our floor of how we are going to fund this. And that, you know, I know this is a wider conversation that we will be having as an entire governing body over the next, you know, however long it takes us to do that plan, 6 months, a year. But that is something that I want to flag and make sure that we all keep our eyes on as we are moving forward throughout the fiscal year and as we are looking at the adjustments to the budget. So no further questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Romero Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a really quick question. The language you used around the community development line item confused me a bit because it signaled different things. So that is one-time federal money, and we know the level that we're getting for the coming fiscal year. Is that correct?
Chair Abeyta, Councilor Romero Worth.
I can go ahead and take that one. So community development actually pairs together both the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as well as the additional CDBG CARES Act federal funding that Alex referenced earlier. So it's one fund, but it is tracked separately, both of those funding sources. So what Director Ladd was referring to is also in the $6.6 million numbers, not just the additional 3 million for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but it is in addition a continued anticipation for federal CDBG funding. I think there has been a consistent pattern from CDBG throughout the current year, and we expect that to continue into FY22 for allocations, block grant allocations around their CARES Act, and then upcoming federal funding as well. So I think that is, we started that allocation. Alex has been managing that funding in the current fiscal year as well, and that we expect to continue moving forward into FY22. So again, Community Development Fund, that second line in the last table is both Affordable Housing Trust Fund, as well as additional federal funding from HUD.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions from either the Finance Committee or members of the governing body that are with us this afternoon? Okay, can I have a motion regarding the affordable housing budget?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Beta.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
so let's move on to arts and culture.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think that, I don't know if Pauline is here. She had a personal emergency she had to attend to. So I think Rod Lambert's going to speak on behalf of the Arts and Culture Department. So Rod, if you would like to take the stage from there.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much. Director Kamiyama has I think she's having a combination of conflicts and technical issues. So yeah, our mission in the Arts and Culture Department is to initiate, sponsor, conduct cooperation for the development of programming for the arts and culture in the city of Santa Fe. A big part of our lens is to going through the Culture Connects kind of perspective to ensure diversity, equity, inclusion, and access in our programming. As you know, we're funded primarily, almost exclusively by the lodger's tax. So along with Alexandra Ladd, we had a big hit last year, particularly as a result of lodger's tax. I think Randy can speak on this later as well. The primary crux of our funding goes to our nonprofits arts organizations to support funding for the promotion of arts and culture, both local, regional, and nationally. Typically, our budget's around $900,000 a year, and we had 6 categories. Last year, we were reduced to 2 categories to around $320,000, which is, a 2/3 budget cut for that program. So not only did the restaurant and hotel industry suffer, we suffered as a result, and also the arts and culture organizations that count on our funding, they suffered primarily the most. So a big part of our budget this year is to increase that line item in advertising, which is how it breaks down, I think, in our budget. And we wanted to increase that, and we're to $425,000, and we're going to have 3 categories of awards this year to kind of focus on different ways that these organizations function. Perhaps one that we want to focus on is primarily performing arts organizations, because those are the ones that were hardest hit as a result of not being able to have live performances. So I guess that's about it. If you have any other questions, again, our value and our priority is based upon making sure the nonprofits arts organizations in this town, we can rebuild that in recovery. And then there's also kind of an emphasis on economic development as well, both with the gallery program and other programs that we do to make sure that artists who suffered during the economic kind of downturn can focus on this, and we can help them become better at what they do and more effective at what they do. So those are our 2 primary focuses that should be reflected in the budget numbers.
Okay, questions of Mr. Lambert? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Actually, Councilwoman Lindell had her hand up first.
Okay, sorry about that. Councilwoman Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. On page 28 in the packet, in the FY22 recommended budget, the second bullet point is $121,000 to accommodate increased activity levels, including $113,000 to support additional advertising for RFPs. Could I get an explanation of that? That seems like an awful lot of advertising money to support RFPs. I'm not sure what the cost of the proposals would be or what that budget item would be, but it seems like $113,000 to support additional advertising for those RFPs. I'm not sure that that's right.
Chair Beta, Councilor Lindell. As I mentioned earlier, that line item in our budget for advertising is specific to our nonprofits arts organization as a function of the lodger's tax and the 2% that goes to that kind of fund for spending. Our nonprofits are taxed with promoting and marketing Santa Fe as an arts and cultural destination. So that money was a result of more came from finance. This extra additional fund was more than we projected in our original amount last year. So we are instantly placing that back into that line item where it originated from. So that was part of the 2/3 deduction that we saw last year. That's a big step in being able to help kind of compensate for that loss.
Okay, I'm just making a point that that's not what the budget book says that it is, and it probably needs to be clarified. Thank you, Chair.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to Rob and Herminia for joining us. Just a quick question. You may actually not be able to answer this. I'm not sure who, and you may actually not want this particular concept I have, but I was just curious why the chart initiative budget wasn't housed under Arts and Culture Department versus City Clerk. And I don't know who would be able to answer that.
I'm a Councilor or Chair Beta, Councilor Villarreal. From my understanding, Constituent Services is managing, we're kind of working in coordination with them. So a large portion of the budget for that program is coming from their budget. And we are kind of supplementing with our own, just kind of our staff and networking and other kind of administrative help that we can do to help facilitate that.
Okay. Does that chart budget cover what you all will need to be supporting?
I think there is a grants and services line item in there in which we have, that would be a place where we would couch those items for being able to hire consultants or offer stipends for kind of community groups to be able to do what they're doing and help facilitate that community building process. I think that's what the grants and services line item. I may be confused by that, but I think that's right. For many, it may have more details.
Chair and council members, we did have an allocation originally for the charts budget, which was about $14,500. We went ahead and took that because it will be housed under constituent services. So we did take that line item out of there, or that allocation out of there, and put it under the constituent services budget.
Okay, so you all feel good about what what's been allocated towards your time? Because I feel like you all will be closely involved with that process. So just want to make sure that there was an equitable amount in the budget.
I definitely, just based on our talks with our director, Pauline Kamiyama, she felt comfortable with the amount that we had and the time that we'd be spending.
Okay. Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, other questions? Is there a motion regarding the arts and culture budget?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilor Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councilor Beta.
Yes. Okay, so that budget has been approved. We are now on to tourism.
Mr. Chair, members of the council and committee, I'm going to ask Director Randy Randall to speak to the tourism department, and he may have some team members here who could add any color to any questions you may have. So Randy, if you want to start.
Thank you, Rich. Mr. Chair, members of the counselors, I really appreciate being able to present this. You can read the mission and description of services, but the true target for this next year is really to facilitate and stimulate recovery in the tourism economy at as fast a pace as we possibly can do. From a revenue standpoint, we're working with a flat budget plus the $236,000 mentioned in the narrative here. On the expense side, I'd like to point out that there's the additional $125,000 in advertising. Wages is showing to be, excuse me. As far as our counts are concerned, we're going down by one with the transfer of the park ranger that we funded for a year is moving over into parks. And so we'll be at 41 instead of 42. And of those 41, there are 4 unfunded positions. So there are 37 funded positions currently in the department. We go to the next page, please. The wages are shown. That's kind of short. There we go. The wages are showing down by $49,000. That's due to that movement of that position. We do include the 4% for employees and the 3% for the director. There is nothing new in contracts, even though it's showing a $200,000 increase. It's because of a T-bar that was made moving some funds out of contracts in this current fiscal year because the contracts were not able to be executed due to COVID's continuation. In other operating costs, that's where the extra $225,000 is for advertising, which brings us to a total advertising budget of $1.5 million. As well as an increase of services of other city departments of $473,000. The other thing I'd like to point out is that in the mid-year budget that's shown, there is a double recording of debt service in the convention center. Originally, in this current year budget, it was planned that the debt would be moved by a transfer out of lodger's tax into a common fund where enterprise debt was going to be paid. That was changed, however, and the debt was actually put into our current budget. That's the $3,255,000 number, but the transfer was not removed. So that is actually double recording the amount of debt that we pay for the convention center, which is the reason that in fiscal 21, you see that large transfer that will not happen. So I would stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Flesh.
I'd like to, clarify the comment on the debt service. And I got to find my email. So when you're comparing the FY22 budget to the FY21 budget, the city has made a change to the enterprise fund debt service. Debt service fund that are impacted, it wasn't just tourism. It included rail yard, midtown campus, and transit. In FY21, the city budgeted debt services for these 4 enterprises in the Enterprise Debt Service Fund, Fund 560. In FY22, the city is budgeting debt service for these 4 enterprises in their respective enterprise funds, not the Enterprise Debt Service Fund. This change was made for transparency purposes. The accounting, when we were creating the new chart of, or moving into Munis, they created the Fund 560 Enterprise Debt Service, and our accounting staff decided that that wasn't as transparent as it should be. Based on an internal review, the city staff determined it was more transparent to separate the debt service into their specific enterprise fund as opposed to commingling them. And that's what created this variance.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question that wasn't mentioned about the budget for travel. And just curious, Director Randall, what's your typical travel budget pre-pandemic?
Mr. Chair, Councilor, the total, we used to go to about between 19 and 21 shows. The average cost is probably between $5,000 and $7,000, 4 on the low, 10 on the high. So there's about $120,000, $125,000 when you. It's a little misnomer to call it just travel because it's the registration, it's the travel, it's the shipping of the goods to the shows. And so we used to go to, as I say, 19 to 21. We have in this budget the plan to go to 12. So it's a couple of the larger shows. They're about $10,000 a piece. And then 10 other shows that are very targeted into the regional market and or the markets that have proven most successful for us rather than trying to explore new markets.
So those 12 shows are actually going to happen this year?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor, yes, a few of the specific shows we'll go to are yet to be determined based on which shows actually occur. The first one we'll do is actually a Connect show that's going to be held in Denver in July. We know that's definite. These other shows are coming back. It's a really good question, but they are coming back. Any travel would be only with the sales manager agreeing to make that travel. If there's any concern on a sales manager's part to travel, we will not require they do so.
Is it just one sales manager that typically travels, or you go with the sales managers, or how does that work?
Mr. Chair, Councilor, no, there are 3 sales managers and the director, and the travel is pretty evenly split between those 4 personnel. The only shows that I've ever gone to are the consumer travel shows as we've moved into a new city. And at this point, there are none of those contemplated for this next fiscal year.
Okay, so if there aren't 12 shows that happen for whatever reason because of COVID, then that will then you wouldn't utilize that budget. This is like the most that you potentially would spend. Is that what you're saying? The 71,500? Is that the full budget, or is that in addition to some other line item for travel?
Mr. Chair, Councilor, the travel, I mean, it's broken into several different lines. There's it's 49,000 in registration, 13,500 in per diem, and 7,600 in transportation. So it's actually less than the 79,000 that the budget book indicates. It's closer to 50, 63. So, well, it's about 72,000. So it's very close to that number. But that is the total amount for all aspects of attending those conferences. It is not, it's a misnomer to call it just travel. It's really conference attendance.
Right, but what I guess I'm asking.
That is the maximum.
That's the max. That's the total amount for all related travel expenses for events and conferences is the 71,500.
Mr. Chair, Counselor, that is correct. That is the total contemplated number that the maximum we go to.
Okay, got it. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Chair,
Yes, Councilman Lindell.
thank you. Mr. Randall, you have 4 unfunded positions, correct?
Mr. Chair, Counselor, that is correct.
What are they?
Mr. Chair, Counselor, it's a editorial content manager, a graphic design position that was added 2 years ago that's never been funded or never been staffed, a litter patrol position, and can't remember what the 4th one is. Let me see if I've got it here.
That's all right. I just wanted a general idea of what they were. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, other questions?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second for the tourism budget. Can I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Beta.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and just to make sure I'm dotting all i's and crossing all t's, can I have a motion regarding the Community Development Department budget?
Move to approve.
Can I have a second?
Chair,
Yes.
to clarify, do we need to add the component regarding further exploration of the Midtown Project Manager in that motion?
Yes, we'll just make sure the motion includes all of the direction that was given with the different sections of this department. So it's included in that. Thank you.
Great. Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Cassett Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Beta.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to Public Works.
Thank you.
Chairman, this is Regina Wheeler. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So glad. Are you ready for us to proceed?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, members of the Finance Committee and Mayor and everybody who's here. Regina Wheeler, Public Works Director. I'm proud to be presenting the fiscal year 22 budget on behalf of the Public Works Department. And I'd like to start by, of course, thanking and recognizing the really incredible work on the finance team's part to make this budget, put this all together, understand all of our funds, think about our department strategically and help us to really shape ourselves and fund ourselves to achieve the community goals that we have. And of course, thanks to City Manager LaPan Hill, who is closely involved, and to the division directors in Public Works who did the hard work in the beginning of developing the budget. I wanted to start by recognizing and presenting a little bit about who the Public Works Department is. You can see it on this chart. It's a big operational department that delivers a myriad of essential services to our city. And I just was reflecting on the past year of this group's ability to deliver seamless essential services through the COVID emergency, to adapt every bit of their daily work and their focus and their methods and their priorities, and show up every day to keep the city operating, to keep everybody safe. The Public Works team includes the custodians that kept all of our workplaces clean, the airport that continued to operate even through the COVID changes and was actually an emergency transport location for patients coming into our region and leaving our region. Our transit team, who not only continued to provide essential bus services to people during the pandemic, but also gave emergency transportation to people needing rides, whether to shelters or to COVID tests or to isolation, and just completely seamlessly and bravely and with great coordination continued to deliver those services. The parks teams, the streets teams were out there the whole time. Midtown team, of course, helped us stand up the shelter and operate that and maintain it, and continue to assist in the maintenance of the shelter that's operating at Midtown. You know, our facilities team. So that's who Public Works is. And I think the performance over the past year is a real demonstration that the skills and the expertise and the dedication of this team. And that's why in this new year, we're really looking forward to adapting to additional changes that would seem like the new normal as we come out of COVID, and as we evolve our needs as a community to be a sustainable, family-friendly, responsive city. You know, whether it's transit, looking at the multimodal transition plan and how do we adapt to new transportation needs, you know, new technology across the board everywhere, upgrading to that, adapting to that. We'll be focusing on our team, on our staff. We'll be doing career development for everybody, training, assignment opportunities, promotion opportunities, as well as creating career ladders where they don't already exist. I thought that AFSCME's comments had some really valuable elements, and that was certainly one, is to really recognize and develop the expertise that we have already inside of our teams. It's really quite extraordinary, as I think the performance during the emergency demonstrates. And so we really want to leverage that into the best future and that we can for Santa Fe. So we'll be adapting to change while we maintain our character and our values. And so we have our Santa Fe way, and we'll make sure that that's the direction that we're going in. The airport will be adapting to change as it's continuing to literally fly the airplane while it's building it. As we expand our airport, there just will be, you know, taking a look at our facilities and what we're going to do about where we're going to house our people and what do those workspaces look like in the future, and adapting to that will be part of that. We'll be part of the Midtown redevelopment, of course, providing expertise in the capital investments and the capital developments there. And a big thing that is a priority in our budget, of course, is the renovation of parks. We're very excited about how that integration has been going. I would say that it exceeded even my own expectations. And that's largely due to the incredible dedication and work of Melissa McDonald, who's been acting division director, and the team at Parks really being willing to give management a chance to do it right and to help them do a great job. And they've really responded. The superintendents in Parks being great partners in leadership, and the whole team across the board. So renovating the parks, Melissa will talk more about that. And then increasing our capacity to deliver on these incredible capital opportunities that we have already on our plates, and with more to come. this is a great opportunity for Santa Fe. There's much of our infrastructure that's aged and doesn't meet expectations. We can really improve quality of life with good deployment, as well as stimulate the economy coming out of the other side of the pandemic. And so this is great. We really need to be able to deploy this capital efficiently and effectively. And so I think city manager and finance director and guidance to focus on that in our budget this year is really well placed. And I guess so that leads us to talking. We could talk a little bit about the specifics of the project management capacity, since I really manage that in the department right now, and we have given that some thought. It is evolutionary. I heard the discussion yesterday about the Midtown project manager, which is funded in our budget right now. Totally open to, of course, the best, place for that position to sit. I would say there are, of course, I think some of the benefits that people were probably thinking of when they originally put it here, which is really our expertise and ability to run contracts, establish leases, maintain facilities, build them, plan them, and build and maintain infrastructure. So that, that expertise really does rest, I see, in Public Works more so than many other places in the city. But, there is the other aspect, of course, that this position could be doing zoning type of work more first and foremost in the beginning. And so I think there is an interesting conversation about where that sits. One of the project administrator positions that we have been given in this budget will sit in parks, actually. So it has come to I believe at this time that there is an actual real benefit for each division to have a project administrator. Because what happens if that isn't present is that the division director is invariably running projects. I'm running projects right now. The airport manager is running projects. Melissa McDonald's running projects. So it's a right-hand person who's right inside the operation, who can keep track of the capital needs for the division, communicate that into the larger capital planning, but also execute projects really in close correlation with the operation. And of course, as part of Public Works, they get to be part of that team that has the expertise and the other project administrators to give them guidance and process and leadership and support. So I think that would be the end of my overview, and I'd be happy to answer questions from the department level, and then each of the division directors will give their presentation.
Okay, so let's go into each division first, and we'll stop and ask questions at the conclusion of each division.
I think I covered that slide pretty much. I mean, there's more specifics about the positions here, but.
So should we start with the airport division then?
That'd be great. Is Mark with us? Oh, there he is. Excellent.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So here we are again at another year. Looking forward to spending a lot more money. You can see that we are, it shows that we have this deficit, but we do not have this. I don't know if you have a question on that or not, but I can let the finance department answer that 31% decline. I think I'm seeing the same.
So Ms. McCoy, does someone from finance want to address the 30% decline?
Mr. Chair. Andy, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, Finance Committee members, I can address that. The airport division was formally subsidized. It's subsidized every year. In most years, it's subsidized by the general fund. The subsidy comes from a general fund code that was specifically set up for airport for this subsidy. This year, because of other funding priorities in the general fund, the subsidy was instead taken from the GRT fund and reserves that were available there. So it looks like a decrease to the airport budget, but it's really not. It's really just a subsidy that was moved from airport to another location, in this case, non-departmental GRT. So that 1.2 million decrease is not an effective decrease to airport. It doesn't decrease any airport priorities, any airport expenses, or anything like that. It's just the ins and outs of transfers and subsidies. So, you know, it's not really an effective decrease to anything in airports' normal operating expenses.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions from the committee regarding the airport division specifically? Questions from either Councillor Vihil-Coppler or Garcia for the airport division? Councillor Lindell, I see your hand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm curious to how we're doing with the project on the parking lot and the progress on that.
And Councillor Lindell, we are actually moving rather rapidly. So we have on April 27th, we have another presentation to the Historic Review Board. Once we get the actual okay for the design of what it looks like, we will be able to go out to bid. So right now, currently, Moles & Corbin is completing the bid packet. And like I said, I'm hopeful that once the Historic Review Design Board accepts the design, we will be able to put that out for bid.
What is our completion timeframe on that?
So let's see, April, if we put it out for bid in early May, we do a 30-day bid, June, possibly break ground by the end of June, and 8 months after that, so early 22.
So end of February 22?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Councillor Vihil-Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to get an update from Ms. Wheeler, because I'm going to go back to our legislative delegation when we had our meeting with them, and concern was expressed because the money that we received from the legislature over the years has gone unutilized to some degree. And that was either our first or second priority during this session. And it was in our resolution to go for it, even still in our resolution after that breakfast meeting. And so then I heard that it was no longer, during the session, it was pulled off from consideration on our priorities without discussion back with the council about how that was done, seen as how it was a resolution that was passed by the governing body. I understand the reasoning, certainly do, but it doesn't, I don't see any discussion here, because frankly, this whole budget seems to be missing, you know, where are we going with all this? The budgets we used to get had goals and objectives. We could see a blueprint for where we've been and where we're going, and how well we spent the money and accomplished the goals from last year and the year before, and so on. But with regard to this particular budget in the airport, for the airport, I don't feel a sense with this budget and the description that's been provided that we are fully briefed and aware of where we've been with this money and where we're going. As far as I remember, in the last 2 years at least, we've been asking about the parking lot paving. So, I mean, I'm just wondering, are we ever going to get anywhere? And are we going to be at the session next year with the same admonishment about why we haven't done anything with the airport? This has been going on for a very long time. And so I just want to get some real information about what is happening.
Ms. Wheeler.
Chairman, yes, thank you so much for the question, Councilor Vigil-Koppler. The first thing I'd say is that we definitely are not doing a good comprehensive report on capital projects as part of the operating budget. And so that would be a good thing to provide to the governing body when we get through the operating budget. And that is normally our process, is that we follow up with a capital budgeting process that gives an update, but I'd be happy.
I'm not talking about what the form is in front of us. I'm talking about this money. This is the airport that we're talking about. So I'm not asking about, you know, where organizationally each fund lies. I'm just asking about progress. And that has nothing to do.
Chairman. Sorry, Chairman. Thank you, Councilor Vigil-Koppler. I didn't mean to. I just said that, you know, definitely capital project reporting and budgeting is separate, but I'd be happy to discuss the progress of that capital project, because it will actually affect our operations this year, as we have to operate while the airport is actually under expansion. As Mark said, he'll be breaking ground later this year, and they have a very quick construction timeline of 8 months, which is surprising, and so that's exciting. And what happened with the airport, actually, the airport project is very complex, and it has actually made excellent progress. What happened was we got $1.5 million for the parking lot pavement. And so we undertook a project to pave the parking lot and design that. And then a year later, we got $10 million to do an airport. And so we took a step back and said, we're going to design an integrated airport, circulation road, new expansion terminal, and parking lot. And so it did set the parking lot back. We had planned to actually even break ground that summer before the September when we got the $10 million. And but right now what you have is that we'll be bidding the whole project together as one, which I think will really produce a much better result. And it's a brand new, I think you've seen the plans. It has a short-term parking, a long-term parking, 2 lanes of bypass circulation for the airport, and a terminal expansion, so that there's actually enough seating for the traffic we have now. It is a very important priority to get additional funds for the next phase. That's what we had actually put in the resolution, was a phase 2 request. But I think it's understandable that the legislature wasn't ready to invest in phase 2 until they saw a little bit more progress on phase 1. And so we'll definitely be able to demonstrate that by the next legislative session. And then, you know, the governing body can decide if it continues to be our number 1 priority even next year, or we can make a strategic plan for that. But I understand that from the outside, it looks like there hasn't been progress, but there is a lot of really excellent work that's gone into really bringing to the table a functional, excellent design for our airport that's actually expandable to a phase 2.
Well, I guess well, can you address how can a unilateral decision be made to go against a resolution that was approved by the council? And how could we allow ourselves to set that as a priority based on a recommendation by the Public Works Department, when now we completely are backtracking and maybe even not going to be ready or even willing to continue this, the momentum that we had and good grace that we had gotten from the legislature in the past 2 years. I worry that there's not a great deal of confidence in anymore, because we were admonished. And so I'm not sure how we plan out these things, because it was a major deal, and the airport is we know that it affects our economic development opportunities. We've talked about this for a very long time, and you do recall that Councilor Mike Harris and still is very concerned to this day about the progress of the airport. And I shudder to think that because he's no longer sitting with us, that then it's okay not to worry about it anymore. But I guess that's cavalier. I shouldn't say worry about it anymore. I mean, not that we're not seeming to get too much progress, so that now we've gathered the attention of the legislature. And that is concerning to me. So how was that unilateral decision made to remove it from the legislative priorities?
Chairman, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, I'm not aware of anything having been removed from the legislative priorities. I just am aware, I think, of, as you're stating, that the legislature expressed that they weren't very excited about the progress with the airport. And so I think that meant to me that they didn't feel like that's where they wanted to invest, and that's all I'm aware of, actually, is the legislature's sort of feedback.
No, it was you that told me, because I asked you how come we're not going for the airport money? And you said, oh, we took it off the table. You told me that. Because I was
Chairman, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, what I meant to express was that the legislature wasn't excited about the priority, and so we had 7 other priorities on the list, and I felt like that's where the investments would be made. I was really not involved in the process very much with the legislature this year, except for that breakfast, actually, and so but I heard the feedback just like you did, that they were not happy with the progress at the airport.
Well, yeah, I did hear that. But what I also heard was we're not going for this priority anymore. And this was during the session. We're not going for this priority anymore because we took it off the table, is exactly what you told me. And I was concerned because I know that this governing body spent a great deal of time establishing our priorities in a resolution which we all voted, and I think it was unanimous, and all of a sudden someone takes our top priority out of the resolution, off the table for lobbying and such. And again, I understand why, but I don't understand how that kind of maneuver could be made without council approval.
Chairman, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, I am sorry if that is what I said to you. I totally misspoke because I am not aware of anything like that happening.
Okay, Ms. Wheeler, one thing that you stated or alluded to as part of this discussion was, and being a member of the Public Works Committee, isn't there a separate budget that goes, capital projects budget that goes to Public Works, and then we have to recommend that as a Public Works Committee to the council as part of this budget? Or how are we going to do that this year? Because I would expect those are the things we need to discuss at Public Works as part of that budget. But I remember we did that maybe 2 years ago. I don't know if that's part of the process this year. But is there going to be an opportunity to have a detailed discussion about these projects at the Public Works Department, or do we need to do it here as part of this? Because we got to have the discussion. I just don't want to take that away from the members of the Public Works Committee if that's where it's going to be had.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think that's correct, is that we do have a separate capital budgeting process where we do list each of the projects and what money's been spent and what money is left. And right now we're running about $100 million active capital project budget, actually, that was approved in the fiscal year 21 budget, kind of associated with the rollover. That's an indication of projects that are already funded. And so it's not part of the operating budget. That one gets adopted, and then we move on to the capital budgeting process like we did 2 years ago.
And what's the schedule for that? When will we have that budgeting process?
I think Chairman and members of the committee, I'd have to work with Director McCoy to really establish the hard dates for that. That has not yet been established.
Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Vihel Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just reiterate that, you know, a budget development process to me is understanding what goals are set by the city and how we're going to accomplish them, and whether we as a governing body agree with the goals that are being set. And that's what the budget and the forms and the funds, I totally understand all that, but budgets are a blueprint, a means for how you're going to get to accomplish the goals. And my question is more related to the goals, which is how I see a budget should be prepared. And in this whole budget process, and I can already see it's, you know, we've asked for information, we haven't gotten it, not yet anyway. And so to see the whole picture, you have to discuss goals and where you're going. And so there's nothing related to that in terms of what we're seeing. We're seeing a few sentences here and there that gives very little information. If I'm to go back to budget books in the past, and actually we're more going this way than I like. I don't like this type of thing where we really, as a council, aren't really planning, and we're not necessarily agreeing on the goals. We're looking at numbers, and that's about it. And so I find that we're missing all of that. So in this whole process, and why I'm asking the question about the airport, that's a major goal that we've had over a big, long time. And to look at this budget, it doesn't tell us a thing about the future and where we are going in the past, where we've been in the past. So that's why and then it coupled in with a resolution that the governing body passed, cavalierly, it seems, on the airport, was cast aside without discussion. And so I realize that I'm taking a little more time than you like, but I'm just saying that that's what is important to me as a counselor. And that's what we've seen in the past. And I know, Mr. Chair, you've certainly seen it in the past, and you've seen it in other organizations, as have I. And I'm already getting the feeling like there's not enough information about what the city's doing and where we're going and where we've been. And it relates even to the questions I asked yesterday about positions. Where do we know where we've been? We see here, you know, positions that are requested, but we don't really see how many positions are in these departments and in these divisions. We don't have an accurate record presented to us about the city and our budget and what the framework is. And so I thank you for allowing me the time to say this, because I was going to say it sooner or later. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Romero Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just feel a need to maybe clarify a little bit some of the concerns that have been voiced. When we were first elected, yourself, Councilor Vihel Coppler, me, and who else came in with us? I'm missing somebody. Well, I guess it was Councilor Lindell was reelected to her seat. There was a philosophy in the city to do something called zero-based budgeting. And that form of budgeting certainly is much more the way we've just heard described, where you look at outcomes and goals and objectives and then fund towards them. And I think over the last few years, the way that philosophy was dropped for a whole host of reasons. And what we're doing here, there is nothing wrong with the way this budget is presented. And I think I would direct everyone, including the public, to the opening message in the larger budget book, which I believe is available on our websites, which gives the message and the overall direction and priorities and objectives that we're trying to achieve with, I think, what Director McCoy called the plan. A budget is a plan. And I think in that opening message, you will see very clearly the investments and the plan that we are moving forward with this budget. And so I just want to direct people, I guess, to where they can find the information should they want more as we continue to dive more deeply into the individual line items. And so just wanted to throw out that information. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all.
Okay, let's move on to the engineering division.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, councilors. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm Javier Rosado. I would like to explain the increase of 10.9% on the engineering division. This is coming from two main sources. The first one is the operating supplies and material for the paint shop and the signal shop. These line items were not included in the previous budget because they were funded from a different source. So now we are putting those back and really similar to the amounts that we have 2 years ago. So those are basically back to what we have 2 years ago. The other source is an increase on the storm water drainage to keep the division in compliance with the MS4 permit and to complete the condition assessment that was initiated in 2019.
Okay, questions for engineering. Ms. Wheeler, did you want to add something?
Yes, please, if I could, Chairman. Thank you so much. And thank you, Javier, for your first budget presentation here at the City of Santa Fe in a very dynamic environment. I just wanted to sort of presence for the Finance Committee, what the engineering team does. You guys are probably very aware. They do the signal maintenance for the traffic signals. They handle the street lights. His team is also deeply involved in construction, big road construction projects. So, our South Meadows and Agua Fria and intersection improvements, the Guadalupe expansion, they're leveraging probably about $30 million in capital, at least ongoing projects at this time, and managing the permits for sidewalks, cafes at this point, and we'll be involved in that. And so I think we have a really good engineering team. We're rebuilding, as you know. We've had serious vacancies. We continue to have the traffic engineer vacancy in engineering. It's a huge focus. HR worked with us to change the requirements of that position a little bit, and we've been actively recruiting people to apply so that we can get traffic engineering in to respond to the many, many, many traffic calming requests that we get. And there's probably a request a day for some significant assessment of traffic engineering in the City of Santa Fe that comes into this division. And so we're actually, in fact, Javier and I are working on with HR to reclassify another position and possibly have 2 traffic engineer positions, because as you know, we've been missing one for many, many years. John Romero filled that position along with the division director, and that's just really unsustainable. And we need to be responsive to the community. And as you know, in the dynamic situation that we're in, we need to, traffic patterns will change, and we want to be responsive to the people's questions and needs, and implementation of solutions as those come up. So that's what we'll be working on this year in the engineering division, definitely, is growing the team and our processes to be responsive and keep safe streets. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, specific questions for engineering. Okay, then let's go ahead and move on to facilities maintenance.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
You don't want these approved by division, right? We're going to approve the whole public works.
We'll approve the whole
together?
public works together.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just checking.
You're welcome. Okay, facilities maintenance.
You're muted, Michael.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, councilors. Facilities maintenance budget is basically pretty flat from last year with the additions of about $300,000 for fire system inspections and improvements, and about $437,000 for COVID-related mechanical improvements, such as UV emitters in the buildings that can take them, and some installation of hands-free plumbing fixtures.
Okay, Ms. Willard, did you want to add anything to facilities maintenance?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would, so the facilities maintenance team is the custodians, the people that maintain the HVAC in our facilities. And actually also included in this budget are some of our capital project administrators that work across city departments, like with Parks and Rec and recreation and libraries, to improve those facilities, and do some great work partnering there. I think that one of the big focuses this year, and we've been working on it for over a year, is to make sure that we have the right Journeyman Ratio, and that we have the safety training and are all completely compliant in our operations. So we have great new job descriptions. I think HR is actually working on implementing our changes so that it's clear who's a journeyman, that we have good ratios and proper licensing and compensation for that expertise, so that we can have safe and efficient and effective facilities maintenance operations. And just always feel the need to really recognize the custodial team through this emergency. They just really showed up every day and kept us safe and made us feel safe. And just really appreciate that, and the leadership from Jude Torres and Michael on that team. And of course, all the work by the project administrators. They are invaluable. As you know, Sam Burnett jumps in and saves us when we need this or that, running security across the city, security contract for the city, and many other services and support like that. So that I appreciate the work by the facilities team, and will continue to be more proactive and have better workflow processes and compliance than ever before.
Okay, thank you. Questions for facility maintenance? Councilwoman Cassette Sanchez.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Regina. I did want to just see if there were any other of the COVID safe procedures that you'd like to highlight. I really want to recognize the work that facilities has had to do in order to keep our staff and our community members safe as they come into our city facilities. You had mentioned the UV filters and installing more of the hands-free. I'm assuming it's going to be like the paper towels and the sinks. Any other COVID safe practices that are included in this budget that we'll be needing to move forward?
Chairman, Councilor Cassette Sanchez, I would say that mostly we have like enhanced cleaning supplies in this budget. We have been leveraging a lot of CARES funds to do those capital, like buy those big HEPA filters that we've put in a bunch of the buildings and improve the HVAC system. In fact, facilities was really responsive to the CARES money and got us a lot of COVID safe equipment. And in fact, I'm not sure, Michael, if all of the hands-free faucets have been installed yet, but we also bought equipment that we can install later. And I think we're looking forward to the possibility of more infrastructure funds from the federal government, possibly to focus on additional COVID practices. And then the other thing is that we actually are looking at the utilization of space in the new normal. What does office space look like? How is it configured? What kind of barriers do you have? How do you keep people safe? So we're, really looking at an assessment of our space needs and how we use it. And we'll be helping to implement those. I think that's more on horizon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, really thank you to the facilities team. That's I think, a very important and often unseen part of the COVID safe practices that we've had to employ. So I really want to make sure that that is recognized. And thank you so much for all that work. And I know that it will continue into this year.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'd actually like to jump to streets maintenance and see if we can get that done today. And then we'll reserve Midtown Campus, parks, and recreation for tomorrow. So let's see if we could get through street maintenance, and that'll be the end. That'll be the last thing we do today.
See, is Tomas Martinez here? I'm not sure if he is. Okay. So I can.
He's in the attendee room. He just needs to be moved in. Whoever has that authority.
Okay, Tomas, you're up. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I was just about to send you an email saying I still don't see myself. Good afternoon, chair members. Thank you for having me on here. First thing, I'd like to thank you guys for all your help and all your support through COVID and with my teams and helping us help the public. With streets, as you guys know, we handle snow removal, we handle stormwater, we handle sidewalks, street repairs, several things. Our budget this year, we're going to be taking on the expansion of Cerrillos and St. Michael's and the back half of Old Pecos Trail. And then also we've got roughly 13 housing developments that have come in throughout the years, and about 8 more that we'll be getting in the next couple of years that we've never really gotten staff or funding for. And so our most major part is the 4 positions to add to help take care of this expansion.
Okay, Councilwoman Lindell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mr. Martinez, I just want to take a moment and personally thank you for the amazing job that you've done in this position. I can't thank you enough. The crews have been terrific. Of course, I like the crews. I always like interacting with them. And if I can get in a snowplow, that I really do like. It scares me, but I like it. It's like being on a ride at an amusement park for me. But you guys have done terrific. And as an acting director, I just really want to thank you for stepping up and doing that job in a way that I'm really in awe of how you've done it. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I couldn't do it without an excellent crew. You know, those guys are a great bunch of guys and they want to do the best for the city. And we thank you a lot for all your support. You're one of our biggest promoters.
Good job. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Tomas, for being with us, Director Martinez. Just curious about the fact that you've been continuously doing double duty. This is what I've been concerned about for all our departments, and you're still acting Streets and Drainage Division Director and then also Director of Transit Operations and Maintenance. So Director Wheeler, what's the plan to make that right so that we actually have, I mean, we know that Mr. Martinez has done well. I'm just wondering, I think that these double duty jobs are not sustainable. So I want to know what the plan is for how we're proceeding and if we're looking for another director position, or what does that look like?
Chairman, Councilor Villarreal, thank you so much for the question. It's a really important one. Yes, when we're taking a look at the structure of Public Works, and I've spoken about it with Tomas and with other of the directors inside of Public Works, and really taking a look and see is like, do we really have the right organizational structure that, say, for instance, that streets that maintains the roads is separate from engineering who builds the roads. And then, and so does it make more sense possibly to combine those two? And when you start asking questions like that, then you have, well, who is in the roles? And then, so we've been looking at that and really wanting to take a moment to decide, with Tomas doing such a great job of really running both divisions. And remember, he's also running transit with the loss of Keith Wilson's position, which actually that is where we're hurting. When we get to transit, we should talk a little bit about plans we have to do that, but because there's a huge administrative component to transit, that was what Keith did. So we've been taking a moment to look at that organizational structure, I would actually say, and we've had discussions about what the right thing to do there is. And the other thing to think about is that Tomas is doing such a good job, and the crews and he have really gelled, and they just really operate well together. And so we didn't need on Tomas's request, not make any fast moves that weren't necessary, because it really was going well. And Felipe Trujillo is the superintendent in streets. He took over after our longtime superintendent left, and his name is slipping my mind, but of course his image is clear. So, those are some of the things that we're thinking about. We do have the position. We are aware of it, and we're kind of working as a team to really make the right next step with that. And I don't know if Tomas wants to add a little bit to that.
Yeah, it's really a cakewalk for me, so don't stress too much. I handled a much larger place than both of mine put together at the moment. Both teams really do gel. And Regina's right. We don't want to make any sudden moves that could hinder either direction, because we're doing our best right now for the public, and it's working. So we're slowly working towards it, but we want to make sure we take the right steps.
Thanks for that candid response, Mr. Martinez. I think it's helpful. Just to clarify, the budget expenditure for streets and roadways, it went down. It says negative 55%. Can you explain that a little bit further?
I believe part of that's due to the gas tax that we had last time around. So it looks like it went down, but really that was separate monies, and we don't have that this time around. So if you guys could possibly find us some more money to fix more roads, hey, we'll take it.
Yeah, Chairman, yes, just to clarify a little bit. So that was, as Tomas said, it was carryover of $1.6 million of capital funds that were in the WIP construction line, which is where we have them when we're, working on projects and using it. And it really kind of it wasn't an operating budget line item, and it shouldn't be there. And it isn't there because it's all spent, and and as Tomas said, we do need more money for road rehabilitation. And I think we've discussed some possible funding for that, and we'll be continuing to work with the governing body and finance to fund some more road rehabilitation.
Okay, that's helpful. I have other questions about other divisions. Mr. Chair, should we let staff know what kind of questions we'll have, or what areas we have questions for tomorrow?
Yeah, that would be, well, do you want to email them to them, or, because what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to give Councilor Rivera an opportunity to address the committee as the chair of finance before we close today. So yeah, questions, if we could email them to the staff, that would be great. And then that would actually give them more time to prepare. So a good idea if we can do that.
Yeah, I think just generally, I want to understand the new positions, like which ones were new positions and which ones were frozen positions that we're bringing back, and we can talk about that tomorrow. I just really want to understand the breakdown.
Okay, great. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I think Finance Committee Public Works is doing a great job in keeping up with the things that they need to. One question that I had for transit is just to make sure that we're keeping up with all the federal grants that are available to us through transit. I don't know if you, Ms. Wheeler, want to answer that, or maybe Tomas.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councilor Rivera, for the question. Yes, we do have federal money flowing into transit for sure. And we had CARES money that has funded us last year and is carrying some over into this year. I think we expect more CARES money. I think, Tomas, we might have even just gotten an announcement of some, and he can be more clear on that. As I had sort of alluded to a few minutes ago, our challenge is really solidifying our processes inside the city for reporting on that federal money. Keith Wilson used to really lead that operation, and as well as with help from David Chapman. And so I think we're really taking a look at, how to really staff that well so we can report well. But the money is flowing right now, and we're definitely utilizing it, and we're developing our ability to report on it better. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Tomas.
Sure, thank you. Yes, the feds just announced some more CARES Act money that they put out, but it'll take probably 3 weeks before the state actually divvies it up. So we'll be getting a report on how much money will be available for us. And at that point, then we will do our application and you guys will see a resolution coming through.
All right, that federal funding is super important and there's a lot of it, so please stay on top of it. The other thing, Miss Wheeler, is the Parks Department. Miss McDonald, she took over basically newly formed division, I guess, and I think a lot of the staff left after that through attrition or retirement. Are we providing enough support to that division?
Chairman and Councilor Rivera, yes, that's a really important area to understand. So Melissa has been doing a huge job in that division, really getting the processes in order with a complete departure of all of the upper management and with very little records left or any breadcrumbs. And so that has been a big focus for us. One of the top requests of Melissa, and I think she's here and might want to add to this, was to add an admin manager to the division. The division came with absolutely no administrative support. Those all stayed with rec. And then to add an operations manager position, because there are a number of superintendents that all have key responsibilities and do a great job there, but there needs to be that sort of higher level management of the operation that she has actually personally been performing. So those two positions have been created and we've actually interviewed for both of them already. So that's pretty fast considering we haven't even had the division for a year. I think an admin manager will be joining her. It will be accepting the position soon. We have made a selection. And the operations manager, we've actually, I think the decision is to, well, we've interviewed and we're making a decision, but we may or may not hire out of this group and continue to have the acting services of one of the superintendents who's doing a great job of helping to lead the division. So we're definitely developing the team, understanding roles and needs, and like, as I said, one of the project administrator positions will go into the Parks division to support special projects and capital projects coming through there. That'll help Melissa as well, and we'll continue to develop the team as we understand it.
Great, thank you for that answer. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your support of Public Works. I think they're doing a great job being shorthanded, and I hope we, the Finance Committee and the City Council, can support really all the work they and the staff have been doing to really double fill and sometimes triple fill positions. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Martinez, thanks again for your street maintenance. I know pothole season is coming, so we look forward to that. You guys did an amazing job last year with getting those potholes filled. I look forward to our discussion tomorrow. We will talk about Midtown Campus, the Municipal Recreation Complex, parking, and then of course, we'll talk more about the $1 million that this budget is proposing to put into our park system, which will include playground equipment upgrades. I look forward to hearing what some of those playgrounds that are going to be benefiting from that. Also trees, the tree project, I've started working on that here myself in District 3 and recruiting neighborhoods for that. And then weeding and trash pickup. I'm interested to hear what our plan is for that because that's something that always comes up. So I look forward to continuing this discussion, and we will adjourn for the day, and we'll be back tomorrow to pick up with Public Works, the Midtown Campus at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.